Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we have another Collecta 2020 figure to take a look at, and this is their newest version of the Allosaurus. This is more in the standard size range as it is a smaller figure, but probably packs just as much detail and beautiful sculpt and paint as a deluxe figure would if this were in fact a deluxe Allosaurus, which I would love to get from Collecta, hint hint Collecta, but this Allosaurus itself looks absolutely gorgeous here as far as I'm concerned. Really nice sculpt on it overall and beautiful paint. I actually really quite like the paint scheme they've gone with on this figure. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get a closer look at it right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Allosaurus, you can see some very nice scale work here on the face. Some beautiful scales sculpted out. Again, many different varying sizes of scales, so it does look quite realistic overall. You can also see the nostrils and the eye socket sculpted quite nicely. The eye is painted with a blackish coloration, if my camera would focus on it. You can see it right there. It does look quite nice as well. The Allosaurus crests up here are painted with like a maroon, which allow the figure to have a little bit of flashiness here on the head with an otherwise pretty dark paint scheme with these dark greens. The lower jaw also looks really quite nice. One area that I could see right now, though, that is definitely a bit of a downside is that, like, inside of the mouth skin flap area. You can see that it's pretty sloppily painted. It's only got, like, a little run of that pink paint as opposed to actually being painted out, really nicely and correctly. And, yeah, same deal over here. And actually, the teeth themselves are, I think, a little bit too thick as far as the paint application goes. So, in general, the mouth is a little bit sloppy on the Allosaurus, or at least on mine right here. I doubt that that's probably a widespread issue. It's probably just something that's limited to the occasional figure, but mine specifically does definitely have some sloppiness to the paint here. You can see the inside of the mouth is also painted with that pinkish coloration. You have a very nice tongue sculpted on in there, and overall I think it is very appealing as far as the actual sculpt goes, but the paint application of the mouth is definitely quite sloppy. You can see, though, quite a few different variations of greens here on the head sculpt of the Allosaurus, some like light greens in the palate area, darker greens in the tip of the snout, and then up here on the head, and then a little bit of a darker green here, but then it transitions to a little bit of a lighter green. So there is definitely some really nice color variation, some very realistic skin tone on the Allosaurus from what I can see already. As we start to move down the neck, you can see how nice those scales continue to look. You can also see the detailing there in the throat. You can actually see a little bit of kind of hanging skin there in the throat. Looks really quite nice as far as that goes. You can also continue to see how the very nice greens and almost like greenish browns transition back and forth in very realistic fashion. Up here on the top of the neck, we have some osteoderms and stuff that run down here and there. We also have some ridges that run along the spinal column that are painted with like a grayish coloration. As we get down here into the body, you can continue to see how beautiful the skin texture of the Allosaurus is. You can also see some more of those osteoderms poking up here and there, mostly just limited to the upper back area, it seems. Some nice kind of skin creasing here in the arm sculpt as we lead out into the arm. You can see some muscle tone there in the arm of the Allosaurus. As we lead out into the hands look really quite nice. Very nicely painted nails with a grayish coloration. Same deal in the opposing hand. You can see them really nicely painted. And again, nicely painted as far as the arms go. The arms also have like variations of green. You can see a little bit of a different green here as opposed to here and here. So they've done a really good job, I think, as far as the greenish coloration on this Allosaurus goes. Very nice dark tones, which I always think look very good on a theropod that you would expect to have to ambush prey and everything. You would think a darker color would probably be ideal, and I think that looks really nice here, the way they've done that on this figure specifically. Really beautiful skin folding and everything going on here in the stomach. Just in general, really nice skin detail, showing off the way the body would kind of be making the skin react to its movement that is currently going on here, and you can definitely see how beautiful Collecta has done as far as the sculpting of that area goes. And you can also see again some more really nice skin texture here in the stomach region, which lightens up right a little bit right there, similar to what we see back here on the thigh as well. As we come back into the body, you can pick out the hip bone a little bit there, some very nice muscle tone there. As far as the thigh goes, the calves, not so much. You can see some muscle tone, but they're fairly thin for the most part. As we lead down into the foot sculpt also looks pretty nice. Nicely painted nails again on the feet, including the dew claw, but the dew claw actually is really sloppily painted. You can see that they've painted the entire toe there with the gray as opposed to just the nails, and it's even actually run onto the foot right there. As we come back up here into the tail, you can continue to see some really nice scaling as we lead out into the tail. Again, a little bit of creasing in the skin right there. Some more osteoderms that we also saw on the thigh, but we also see them running out the length of the tail here. And the tail actually just comes out almost, it seems like straight out. Yeah, a little tiny angle to it, but for the most part it's straight out but curves in an upward fashion. And you can continue to see how beautiful that paintwork is as far as there's like many different variations of colors as you lead out the length of the tail. All very nice dark tones, but there's just a lot included and it looks beautiful. Looking at the opposing side, again, absolutely beautiful, but you're probably not going to see too much difference on this side as opposed to what we had seen in the previous side, because there's not really too much difference in the positioning of the body. You can see the really nice skin detail as we lead down the neck, kind of some nice creases and everything in the skin. Again, that little bit of skin hanging there in the throat. You can continue to see the really nice osteoderms that are poking up here and there on the body, as well as those beautiful ridges that do run the entire length of the dinosaur. Some more really nice skin detail sculpted out right here behind the arm. Again, the arm is pushing into the body a little bit right there, so it would be bunching that skin up, and it's very nicely shown on the part of Collecta's sculpt. You can also see some really nicely painted nails, as well as the arm sculpt looking quite beautiful. As we lead back into the body, again, very nice detailing in the stomach region. Some more skin sort of reacting, bunching up a little bit there. As we move back into the thigh, you can again make out the hip a little bit there. Some more osteoderms and that little bit of a lighter coloration there in the thigh region. As we move down into the foot sculpt on this side also looks really quite nice. Nails are painted pretty nicely as well. Let's see if this dew claw is... No, this dew claw looks okay. It's just this one that for some reason was really sloppily painted. And then we move out the length of the tail. Again, the tail looks almost exactly the same on this side because the tail is fairly straight for the most part, aside from a very slight angle, but it does come up in an upward positioning. On the underside, you can see that we have the cloaca down there, and we also have some really nice scale work here on the underside as well. Actually, I do quite like the scaling here on the underside. It almost looks a little bit crocodilian, sort of, on the underside. Very cool looking for sure. So, as far as this sculpt goes, it is an absolutely beautiful looking Allosaurus, but as far as the paintwork goes, it's definitely a little bit sloppy in certain areas, but I don't think it takes away from the figure too much. Definitely awesome regardless. As far as the size goes on our Allosaurus, you are looking at about 7¼ inches for a length, or about 18½ centimeters. And then for a height, about 3½ inches or around 9 centimeters, somewhere in that range, closing in on that area. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Allosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our Allosaurus. And these three figures next to the Allosaurus should show you that it is a pretty small figure. Being a standard-sized figure from Collecta, they usually are a bit smaller, and you can without question see that right here with these figures in comparison. So this 2020 Collecta Allosaurus is definitely a very nice looking figure and has a very beautiful appearance to it. The sculpt is absolutely gorgeous, especially considering its size. It is very highly detailed for being such a small figure, and definitely a really nice paint job to go with it as well. I think the paint job is actually one of the things I'm the biggest fan of when it comes to this figure, aside from a few certain sloppy areas. But the actual color scheme they've gone with here on the figure is really, really nice and very appealing looking in my opinion. It's definitely the type of paint scheme that I do like seeing on theropods, like I stated earlier. Again, something you would think would have to be able to hide in the brush and sort of ambush prey from time to time. And that is definitely the type of paint scheme I see here on the Allosaurus that you see before you. There are definitely many different tones of color included as well. It's not like it's just one boring green coloration or anything like that, because that is not the case. There are actually quite a large amount of variations of color included, like darker, lighter greens, even brown areas like brownish greens. There's just a ton of color variation included, and it's very impressive when you actually look at it. If you get it in a very nice light and actually take a look at all the different colors included, it is really beautiful the way Collecta has painted this. Again, giving it a very lifelike appearance as far as the skin tone and everything goes. So I am quite the huge fan of the paint job overall, and I also love that they've used like that maroon, which is something you do see quite often on Allosaurus figures up on the crest, but I still think it looks really good in contrast to the rest of the darker coloration of the body. Again, there is definitely some sloppiness with the figure though. We have very sloppy paint in the mouth, like that skin flap on the side of the mouth is just really badly painted actually on both sides. And then you also have some paint that seems to be a little bit too thick on the teeth, because it now almost drowns the teeth out a little bit as opposed to actually being able to see them nicer. It is definitely really thick. But I don't think the actual paint of the teeth take away from the figure too much, and really neither does the skin flap area, but it's definitely a bit of a downside, I will say that. And aside from that, the only real sloppiness to the paint would be that one dew claw, which was just for some reason totally painted up onto the toe itself. But aside from that, I think the paintwork is really nicely done and definitely a very beautiful looking Allosaurus. The sculpt is nothing amazing as far as the positioning of the body and the stance that it is in, but it definitely looks quite nice as well. It almost gives me the feeling like maybe it's having sort of a standoff with maybe another Allosaurus, sort of like a territorial thing or something like that, because it's leaning up a little bit. Looks like it's definitely trying to appear threatening. That may or may not be the inspiration to the positioning of the body, but that's just kind of my takeaway to it. Again, very nicely sculpted. The detailing of the figure is beautiful in every possible way, whether it's the really nice skin texture or the very nice skin folds within the body. I love the ridges that run along the back and the very nice osteoderms they have sculpted out throughout the entire figure. Just an absolutely beautiful looking Allosaurus as far as the sculpt goes. So this is yet another really nice 2020 figure from Collecta. They're just absolutely on a roll with this 2020 year. So if you would like to pick this up, I will do my best to find a link to include in the description. I'm not 100% sure if it's available on Minizoo quite yet, but if it is not, it should be soon. And it's also going to be available on Everything Dinosaur for sure very soon. So make sure you check the description. If there is a link, it will be included. And if not, make sure you keep checking back to those websites, as it should be in stock very soon. And make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.